3 months after the battle with Commander Wraith, New Bisan colony had transformed into something neither human nor Kelani had expected. The orbital platforms buzzed with activity as mixed crews of both species worked together to repair and upgrade the defenses. In the colony's corridors, the sound of Kalani clicking languages mixed with human conversation as naturally as air and water. Tay-Min stood in his office, reviewing the morning reports when Arya entered carrying 2 cups of tea. It had become their daily ritual, one that evolved naturally from her desire to serve and his growing appreciation for her insights. The Kelani delegation from the outer colonies has arrived, she reported, setting 1 cup on his desk. Elder, Vex sends his greetings and requests a meeting to discuss the new trade agreements. Of course. And the human ambassador from Earth Command? Ambassador Chun landed an hour ago. She's impressed by what she's seen so far, but she has questions about our joint defense protocols. Tay-Min smiled at how naturally Arya said our protocols. Over the past months, she had become far more than a cultural liaison. Her title was now Senior Advisor for Interspecies Relations, a position created specifically to recognize her unique role in bridging human and Kelani societies. There's something else, Arya continued, her tone becoming more formal. I received a message from my homeworld yesterday. 3 other Kelani clans have requested permission to send tribute missions to human colonies. Tay-Min paused with his teacup halfway to his lips. How do you feel about that? Concerned, Arya admitted. Not all humans will understand what tribute means to my people, and not all Kelani will be as fortunate as I was to find someone willing to learn. What do you suggest? I would like to create a program to prepare both sides. Humans need to understand that accepting tribute is accepting responsibility for another person's honor and purpose. Kelani need to understand that humans value individual choice above traditional hierarchy. It was a complex problem, but Tay-Min had learned to trust Arya's judgment on cultural matters. Her understanding of both societies had grown far beyond what either species possessed individually. Draft a proposal, he said. We'll present it to both the human and Kelani leadership councils. Arya bowed slightly, a gesture that had evolved from the deep formal bows of her arrival into something more like a nod between equals. I will begin immediately. As she turned to leave, Tay-Min called her back. Arya, can I ask you something personal? She paused, tilting her head in the curious way that had become familiar to everyone in the colony. Of course. Do you ever regret coming here? Do you miss your old life? For a moment, Arya was quiet, considering the question seriously. I miss some things about my homeworld. The singing trees in the evening, the taste of fresh kelp from the ocean farms, the sound of my family's voices. But I found something here that I never expected. Among my people, I was valued for my ability to serve others. Here, I am valued for who I am as an individual. Both have meaning, but together they create something greater than either alone. And you're happy with how things worked out? Arya's smile was gentle but confident. When I first arrived, I thought my purpose was to serve you in the traditional Kelani way. I thought success meant you accepting that service without question. Now I understand that my real purpose was to help build a bridge between our peoples. The service I provide now is greater than anything I could have offered as a traditional tribute. That afternoon, Tay-Min watched Arya conduct a briefing for the newly arrived Earth Command ambassador. She moved easily between human and Kelani. Communication styles, translating not just words but concepts and cultural expectations. The key to successful cooperation, she explained to the ambassador, is understanding that both species want respect, but we define respect differently. Humans show respect by acknowledging individual autonomy. Kelani show respect by accepting responsibility for others' welfare. When we combine these approaches, we create something stronger than either tradition alone. Ambassador Chun nodded thoughtfully. And this approach has been successful? Our defense efficiency has improved by 40% since we integrated Kelani tactical methods with human technology, Arya replied. Trade volumes have increased by 60%. And we've had 0 major cultural conflicts between species in the past 2 months, Impressive results. After the briefing, Heyman found Arya in the colony's garden dome, the same place where they had first tried to understand each other months ago. She was tending to a new section where Kelani plants grew alongside earth flowers, creating combinations that shouldn't have worked but somehow did. The ambassador seemed satisfied with your presentation, he said, sitting on the bench beside her. She's intelligent and practical. She understands that successful diplomacy requires adapting to new situations rather than imposing old solutions. Taemin watched her hands as she adjusted the nutrient mixture for a particularly exotic Kelani flowering vine. Her movements were careful and precise, but no longer the rigid formality of a servant. She worked with the confidence of someone who knew her skills were valued. I have something to tell you, he said. Earth Command has officially recognized the new Bizan model as the template for future human-alien cooperation. They want to establish similar programs throughout the frontier. Arya's hand stilled. And? They've asked me to head the new interspecies relations department. It would mean traveling to different colonies, helping establish cultural exchange programs. That's a great honor. You've earned it. The position comes with the authority to choose my own senior staff. Arya turned to look at him directly. What are you asking? I'm asking if you'd be willing to continue this work on a larger scale, to help other humans and aliens learn what we've learned here. For a long moment, Arya was silent. Then she asked, would this be an assignment or a choice? A choice, Taemin said firmly. You're free to refuse, to stay here, or to return to your homeworld, if that's what you prefer. Whatever you decide, you'll always have a place at New Bizan. Arya smiled, and Taemin realized it was the same expression she had worn when she first arrived, full of hope and purpose. But now it carried something additional, the confidence of someone who knew she was valued for who she was, not just what she could provide. I accept, she said. But on one condition. What's that? That we do this as partners, not as superior and subordinate. My people's concept of service has value, but so does your people's concept of equality. I want to help create something that honors both. Taemin extended his hand in the human gesture of agreement. Partners, Arya grasped his hand, but instead of shaking it, she performed a modified version of the Kelani bonding ritual, pressing their palms together and speaking a phrase in her native language. What does that mean? Taemin asked. It means that we walk the same path with different steps, but we reach the same destination. As they sat in the garden surrounded by the impossible mixture of earth and Kelani plants, Taemin reflected on how far they had both come. Arya had arrived as a tribute, offering herself in service to someone she saw as a superior. She was leaving as a partner, carrying the knowledge that respect could exist between equals. There's one more thing I want to tell you, Arya said quietly. When I first came here, I thought being rejected as tribute was the worst shame I could face. Now, I understand that the greatest shame would have been if we had never learned to truly see each other as individuals worth knowing. And now? Now I know that the best gifts are the ones that transform both the giver and the receiver. That evening, as the transport ships prepared for departure to their new assignment, Taemin watched the mixed crews of humans and Kelani working together with an efficiency that would have seemed impossible a year ago. Arya stood beside him, no longer the uncertain young woman who had knelt on the landing pad, but a confident leader ready to help others bridge the gap between different worlds. She had come to New Bizan as a tribute, offering service in the hope of finding acceptance. She was leaving as a partner, carrying the understanding that true respect grew not from hierarchy or submission, but from the willingness to see beyond the surface differences to the common hopes beneath. In the end, Taemin realized she had never needed to ask why he wouldn't reach out to her. He had simply needed to learn how to reach back. The rescue of the Kelani transport had been a temporary victory. Within days of their return, intelligence reports confirmed what everyone feared. Commander Wraith was preparing for a full assault on New Bizan colony. His fleet has tripled in size, Junho reported during the emergency briefing. We're looking at 40 ships, maybe more. They're massing just outside our sensor range. Taemin studied the tactical displays with growing concern. The colony's defenses were strong, but not strong enough to withstand an attack of that magnitude. How long do we have? He asked. Best estimate is 72 hours. After that, they'll be in position to begin bombardment. Hai-Jin looked up from her tablet. Earth Command is sending reinforcements, but they won't arrive for a week. We're on our own. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. New Bizen wasn't just a trading post. It was home to 15,000 people. Evacuating that many colonists would be impossible with their current transport capacity. What about our allies? Taemin asked. The Kalani have ships in this sector. I've already contacted Elder Vex, Junho replied. He's willing to help, but his fleet is designed for patrol duty, not major combat. Against Wraith's numbers, they'd be wiped out. Arya, who had been quietly listening from the back of the room, stepped forward. May I speak? Taemin nodded. Over. The past few days, as she recovered from her ordeal, he had included her in more discussions. Her insights about Kalani capabilities had proven valuable. You are thinking like humans, she said carefully. You see Wraith's fleet as a single enemy that must be defeated in direct combat. But my people have fought raiders for generations. We have learned other ways. What do you mean? Junho asked. Wraith ships are fast and well-armed, but they depend on supply lines. His crews are mercenaries who fight for profit, not loyalty. If those advantages are removed, his fleet becomes much weaker. Taemin leaned forward, intrigued. How do we remove those advantages? By making this battle cost more than he can afford to lose. And by showing his crews that following him leads to death, not profit. Over the next 2 days, Arya worked with the colony's tactical team to develop a battle plan unlike anything they had used before. Instead of meeting Wraith's fleet in direct combat, they would use hit-and-run tactics, targeting supply ships and communication relays while avoiding his main battle groups. The key is coordination, Arya explained to the assembled ship captains. Kalani patrol ships will harass his flanks while human vessels strike at his supply convoys. We make him chase us through asteroid fields and sensor shadows, forcing him to spread his forces thin. Captain Lee, who had led the rescue mission, raised his hand. What happens when he gets tired of chasing us and just attacks the colony directly? That's when we spring the real trap, Arya replied. She activated a holographic display showing New Bisen's orbital defenses. My people have been working with your engineers to modify the defense platforms. When Wraith ships move in for bombardment, they'll find the colony much better protected than they expected. The plan was risky and complex, requiring precise timing and perfect coordination between human and Kalani forces. But it was their only chance of survival when the battle began. Everything went wrong. Wraith had anticipated their hit-and-run tactics and positioned his fleet to counter them. The first wave of attacks achieved limited success before his ships adapted to their patterns. Worse, intelligence reports revealed that he had brought more ships than expected, including heavy cruisers capable of breaking through the colony's ENHANCD defenses. We're not doing enough damage, Lee reported from his ship. His supply lines are better protected than we thought? Taemin watched the tactical display with growing desperation. Red icons representing enemy ships vastly outnumbered. The blue ones showing Allied forces. Several of their own vessels had been damaged or destroyed, and they were running out of options. Sir, the communications officer called out, we're receiving a message from Commander Wraith. He's offering terms for surrender. The main screen flickered to life, showing a scarred alien face with cold, calculating eyes. Wraith belonged to a species that humans had encountered only rarely, with gray skin and predatory features that made him look like a living weapon. Human colony, Wraith's voice was smooth and confident. You have fought bravely, but you cannot win. Surrender now, and I will allow your people to evacuate safely. Continue to resist, and I will reduce your world to ash. Before Taemin could respond, Arya stepped into view of the camera. Commander Wraith, she said calmly. I am Arya of the Kalani Tribute Mission. I speak for both human and Kalani forces in this sector. Wraith's expression shifted to amusement. A Kalani girl speaking for humans? How interesting. Do you have something to offer me, little one? I have a question. Do you know the story of the Kelani defense of Vexstar Station? Ancient history has no relevance here. It does if you understand the lesson. At Vexstar, a vastly outnumbered Kelani force held off raiders for 6 days by making the cost of victory too high to bear. They didn't defeat the enemy fleet. They made the enemy defeat themselves. Taemin watched Wraith's face carefully. The commander was still smiling, but there was uncertainty in his eyes now. Your point? Wraith asked. My point is that you're not fighting just the ships you can see. Every minute you spend here, more human and Kelani reinforcements are on their way. Every ship you lose reduces your profit margin. Every hour of delay makes your mercenaries more nervous about their chances of survival. You're bluffing. Check your casualty reports. Count how many of your supply ships have been destroyed. Calculate how much this battle is costing you compared to how much you expected to gain. For several seconds, Wraith said nothing. Then his image cut off abruptly. What was that about? Hyjin asked. Psychology, Arya replied. Wraith is a businessman. First and a warrior second? If we can make him believe that continuing this fight will bankrupt him, he might choose to retreat rather than risk everything on one battle. But what if he doesn't believe it? Arya's expression was grim. Then we fight to the last ship. For 6 tense hours, the two fleets maneuvered around each other, trading fire but avoiding decisive engagement. The human and Kelani forces continued their hit-and-run attacks, targeting Wraith's support vessels and forcing him to deploy more ships to protect them. Then, just as their ammunition began to run low, something unexpected happened. 3 of Wraith's mercenary captains broke formation and jumped to hyperspace, abandoning the battle entirely. Their crews are losing confidence, Arya observed. Some of them have decided this fight isn't worth the risk. More ships began to desert. Wraith's fleet. What had started as trickles became a flood as mercenary captains realized they were facing a grinding war of attrition rather than a quick, profitable raid. By the time Wraith finally ordered his remaining ships to retreat, his fleet had been reduced by more than half. New Bizen colony was safe, but the victory had come at a terrible cost in ships and lives. As the all-clear signal echoed through the colony, Taemin found Arya standing alone in the observation deck, looking out at the stars where the battle had raged. You saved us, he said simply. We saved each other, she replied. That's what allies do. Taemin realized that at some point during the crisis, he had stopped thinking of Arya as a foreign guest or an unwanted obligation. She had become an integral part of the colony's defense, a trusted advisor whose insights had proven invaluable. I owe you an apology, he said. When you first arrived, I thought I was protecting your freedom by not accepting your service. But I was really just protecting myself from having to understand what service meant to you. Arya turned to face him. And I owe you thanks for teaching me that service and friendship are not opposites. Among my people, we serve those we respect. But humans serve alongside those they respect. Both ways have value. So what happens now? Now we build something new. A partnership that honors both our ways. As they watched the Kelani ships joining the human vessels in patrol formation around the colony, Taemin realized that the greatest victory of the battle hadn't been military. It had been learning that understanding between different peoples was possible, even when their values seemed incompatible. The Kelani transport ship never reached its destination. 3 days after Arya's departure, it sent a distress signal from the neutral zone between human and Kelani space. Engine failure had left them drifting, and Commander Wraith's raiders were closing in. Tae-Min stood in the colony's communications center, listening to the crackling transmission from the transport's captain. We have 12 passengers aboard, including the tribute daughter of Elder Vex's line, the captain reported. Our weapons are minimal. We cannot fight them off. Junho was already pulling up tactical displays. We have a patrol ship 4 hours away, but Wraith forces will reach them in 2. What about the Kelani fleet? Hyjin asked. Too far out? They're defending their homeworld approaches. Taemin stared at the star chart, his mind racing. Arya was out there, trapped between hostile forces in the cold void of space. She had left because she felt unwanted, and now she might die thinking that no one cared enough to save her. "Prep the fastest ship we have," he ordered. "I'm going after them." "Sir, that's not advisable," Junho protested. "You're not military personnel, and we need you here for the strategic planning." "Then you handle the planning. I'm going to get our people back." "Arya isn't our people," Junho said bluntly. "She's Kelani, and she chose to leave." Taemin turned on him with an anger that surprised everyone in the room, including himself. "She's under our protection. She came here because her people trusted us to honor their gift. If we let her die now, we'll deserve whatever judgment Elder Vex passes on us." 2 hours later, Taemin was aboard the fastest scout ship in the colony's fleet, racing toward the coordinates where the Kelani transport drifted. The pilot, a veteran named Captain Lee, had volunteered for the mission despite the obvious dangers. "ETA 20 minutes, Lee reported. "But sensors show 3 raider ships already in the area. They're not attacking yet, which means they're probably planning to board and capture prisoners. Can we outrun them if we grab the transport? Not. With a ship that size, we'll have to fight our way out." Taemin checked his sidearm, knowing it would be useless in a space battle but needing something to do with his hands. "Do what you have to do." When they reached the coordinates, the scene was worse than expected. The Kelani transport hung dead in space, its hull scarred by weapon impacts. 2 of Wraith's raider ships flanked it while the third prepared to dock. "They're boarding," Lee said grimly. "We're too late to prevent it, but maybe we can interrupt whatever they're planning." The scout ship's weapons were limited, but Lee used them effectively, targeting the docking tube that connected the raider to the transport. The explosion severed the connection and sent both ships spinning apart. "This is Captain Lee of the Human. Vessel Swift Current, Lee broadcast on all frequencies. Release the Kelani transport immediately or face the consequences." The response came not from the raiders, but from inside the transport itself. "Human vessel, this is Arya of the Kelani tribute mission." Her voice was strained but clear. "The raiders have taken control of our bridge, but some of us are still free in the cargo bay. We have managed to seal the internal bulkheads." Taemin grabbed the communications microphone. "Arya, this is Taemin. Are you injured?" There was a pause before she replied, "Honored Taemin, why are you here?" The question hit him harder than any weapon could have. Even now, trapped and in danger, she couldn't understand why he would come for her. "Because you're important," he said simply. "Because I should have told you that before you left. I do not understand. I failed in my service. I brought shame to my people and burden to yours." Before Taemin could respond, the raider ships opened fire on the scout ship. Lee threw their vessel into evasive maneuvers, but they were outnumbered and outgunned. "I can keep them busy," Lee shouted over the sound of alarms, "but not for long. If you're going to do something, do it now." Taemin switched to a private channel that only Arya could hear. "Listen to me carefully. You didn't fail. I failed. I was so worried about treating you like property that I forgot to treat you like a person I valued. That's my mistake, not yours. But you never accepted my service. You avoided me. You made it clear that my presence was unwelcome. I thought I was respecting your freedom. I didn't realize I was making you feel rejected." Another impact shook the scout ship. Through the viewport, Taemin could see the transport listing badly, atmosphere leaking from several hull breaches. "Arya, I need you to listen. Can you get to the transport's navigation controls? The bridge is sealed, but there may be auxiliary controls in the engineering section. If you can restore partial power, we might be able to tow you out of here. I will try, but, honored Taemin, if I do not survive this, please know that serving you was the greatest honor of my life, even if I was not worthy of acceptance." The words cut through Taemin like a blade. She still believed that he had rejected her because she wasn't good enough, not because he had been trying to respect her autonomy. "You were worthy," he said fiercely. "You are worthy. And when we get out of this, I'm going to spend as long as it takes to prove that to you." For several minutes, There was only the sound of weapons fire and Captain Lee's muttered curses as he tried to keep their ship intact. Then Arya's voice came back on the comm. "I have reached the auxiliary controls. The transport's engines are damaged, but I can restore life support and basic maneuvering." "That's all we need. Lee, can you get a tow cable on them?" "If they can." "Hold steady for 30 seconds, yes?" What followed was the longest 30 seconds of Taemin's life. The scout ship had to stop dodging to deploy its tow cable, making it a stationary target for the raiders. Weapon impacts hammered their shields while Lee fought to maintain position. "Got it," Lee finally announced. "Cable is locked. Let's get out of here." The journey back to New Bizan took 4 hours, with the damaged transport in tow and raider ships pursuing them for the first 2. By the time they reached colony space, Taemin felt like he had aged a year. As soon as they docked, he ran to the transport's airlock. Arya was among the first passengers to disembark. Supported by 2 other Kelani who had been helping tend to the injured, she looked up at Taemin with those amber eyes that had haunted his thoughts for the past week. "You came for us." "I came for you," he corrected. "And I'm sorry it took a crisis to make me realize what I should have said months ago." Arya straightened despite her obvious exhaustion. "What should you have said?" "That having you here wasn't a burden or an obligation. It was a gift, and I was too stupid to appreciate it." For the first time since her arrival at New Bizan, Arya smiled without reservation. It transformed her entire face, making her look young and hopeful again. "Does this mean you will accept my service?" she asked. Tae-Min smiled back. "It means I'd like to learn what that really means to you. And I'd like you to learn what friendship means to humans. Maybe we can find something that works for both of us." "I would be honored to try." As they walked together toward the medical bay, Taemin realized that sometimes the greatest act of respect was not giving someone what you thought they wanted, but taking the time to understand what they actually needed. The conversation Taemin had promised never happened. 2 days after he had offered to learn about Kelani ways, emergency alerts began blaring throughout New Bizan colony. Commander Wraith's forces had attacked a human supply convoy near the outer rim, destroying 3 ships and capturing their cargo. Tae-Min found himself pulled into urgent strategy meetings with Junho and the other colony leaders. The attacks weren't random raids. Intelligence reports suggested that Wraith was testing human defenses, looking for weaknesses before launching a larger assault. "We need to increase patrols along the shipping lanes," Junho said, pointing to star charts spread across the meeting table. "And we should request additional fleet support from Earth Command." "That will take weeks," Haijin replied. "We need solutions we can implement now." Tenon stared at the charts, his mind racing through possibilities. "What about asking our allies for help? The Kelani have patrol ships in this sector." "Their ships are built for defense, not pursuit," Junho said. "Besides, we can't ask them to risk their people for our supply problems." The meetings stretched on for hours. When Taemin finally returned to his office late that evening, he found a covered plate of food on his desk. The meal was still warm, prepared with the spices and seasonings he preferred. A small note beside it read, "For when you have time to eat, Arya." He ate the food quickly while reviewing intelligence reports, barely tasting it. The attacks were escalating, and every hour of delay could mean more human lives lost. The pattern continued for weeks. Taemin would arrive at his office to find small gifts from Arya. Meals when he worked late, clean clothes when he had no time for laundry. Reports organized exactly how he needed them. But he rarely saw her, and when he did, their interactions were brief and formal. "Thank you for the food," he would say hurriedly, already reaching for the next urgent message. "It is my honor to serve," she would reply, bowing slightly before disappearing again. Arya had stopped asking for guidance or trying to engage him in conversation. She seemed to understand that he was busy with important matters. But her gifts became smaller and less frequent, as if she was afraid of bothering him. One morning, Haijin cornered Taemin in the corridor outside the communications center. "When did you last actually talk to Arya?" she asked without preamble. Taemin paused, trying to remember. I thanked her for organizing those supply manifests yesterday. Or was that the day before? I mean, really talk to her. Not just thank her. For something, I've been busy, Hyjin. We're trying to prevent a war, and she's been trying to help. Do you know she's been studying our military protocols? She's learned more about human defense strategies in the past month than most of our junior officers know. Taemin frowned. Why would she do that? Because she wants to be useful. Because she's trying to find a way to serve that you'll actually accept. Hyjin's voice carried a note of frustration. But you're so focused on other problems that you haven't noticed. Before Taemin could respond, his communicator buzzed with another urgent message. Wraith's forces had been spotted near the Kelani border. The crisis was escalating. We'll talk about this later, he said, already walking toward the command center. Will we? Hyjin called after him. Or will there just be another emergency? That evening, Taemin worked alone in his office, surrounded by star charts and tactical reports. The colony felt quiet around him, most people having gone to sleep hours ago. He was so absorbed in his work that he didn't notice Arya enter until she spoke. Honored Taemin, I have prepared a report you might find useful. He looked up to see her standing near his desk holding a data tablet. She looked thinner than when she had first arrived, and there were dark circles under her amber eyes. What kind of report? He asked, taking the tablet. An analysis of Commander Wraith's attack patterns, cross-referenced with Kelani intelligence about his fleet composition and likely targets. Taemin scanned the report quickly, his eyes widening as he read. The analysis was thorough and insightful, identifying weaknesses in Wraith's strategy that the human military advisors had missed. This is excellent work, he said. How did you get access to Kelani intelligence files? I contacted Elder Vex directly. I explained that serving you meant helping protect human interests, and he agreed to share information that might be useful. For the first time in weeks, Taemin really looked at Arya. She had been working on this analysis while he ignored her, using her connections and knowledge to help solve the crisis that consumed his attention. Arya, this could be exactly what we need to predict Wraith's next move. Thank you. She bowed deeply. I am honored to be of service. But as she turned to leave, Taemin caught a glimpse of something in her expression that made him pause. Sadness. Maybe, or resignation. Wait, he called. Are you all right? Arya stopped but didn't turn around. I am well, honored Taemin. Is there anything else you require? No, I just thought. You look tired. I will rest when my duties are complete. Her voice was perfectly polite and completely empty of emotion after she left. Taemin stared at the closed door for a long time. Arya had given him exactly what he needed to help win the war, but something about the interaction felt wrong. She had seemed distant, formal in a way that went beyond Kelani politeness. He tried to remember the last time he had seen her smile, or show any sign of the hope and eagerness she had displayed when she first arrived. He couldn't. The next day, he asked Hyjin to check on Arya's well-being. She spends most of her time alone, Hyjin reported. She's polite to everyone, but she doesn't really talk to anyone. Some of the other colonists have tried to befriend her, but she keeps her distance. Is she homesick? I don't think that's the problem. I think she's trying not to be a burden. She's not a burden. Have you told her that? Taemin realized he hadn't. In his rush to respect her independence and deal with the military crisis, he had never actually explained to Arya that her presence was welcome. He had assumed she would understand, but clearly, she had drawn very different conclusions. That evening he went looking for Arya, intending to finally have the conversation he had promised weeks ago. But when he reached her quarters, he found them empty. Her few belongings were gone, and a note on the desk explained that she had requested passage on a Kelani transport ship back to her homeworld. By the time Taemin reached the spaceport, the ship was already powering up for departure. Through the viewports, he could see Arya sitting alone in the passenger section. Staring out at the colony lights, he tried to contact the ship, but the pilot explained that Elder Vex's daughter had requested privacy during her journey home. The ship lifted off before Taemin could do anything to stop it. As he watched the transport disappear into the night sky, Taemin realized that his attempts to give Arya freedom had somehow driven her away entirely. He had been so concerned with not treating her like property that he had forgotten to treat her like a person worth knowing. The war with Wraith still raged, but suddenly it felt less important than the quiet young woman who had tried so hard to serve and had received so little acknowledgement in return. 3 weeks had passed since Arya's arrival, and Taemin was running out of ways to avoid her. Every morning he found her waiting outside his office door, ready to serve. Every afternoon she appeared with offers to clean his quarters or prepare his meals. Every evening she stood by silently, hoping for some task that would prove her worth. "She's driving me crazy," Taemin complained to Haijin as they walked through the colony's main corridor. "Yesterday I found her reorganizing my files. She'd sorted everything by color instead of date." Haijin tried not to smile. "Did you tell her the correct system?" "That's not the point. I never asked her to touch my files in the first place." Taemin stopped walking and turned to face his colleague. "How do I make her understand that she doesn't need to serve me?" "Maybe the question is, how do you make yourself understand that she wants to serve you?" Haijin replied. "Have you actually talked to her about why this matters to her people?" Taemin frowned. "I've tried. Every time I ask her to just relax and enjoy herself, she looks at me like I've said something terrible, and she asks if she's failed somehow." "And what do you tell her?" "I tell her she hasn't failed. I tell her she's free to do whatever she wants. I've shown her the colony's library, the recreation areas, even the workshops where people learn new skills. She just nods politely and goes back to trying to serve me." They reached the cafeteria, where Arya sat alone at a corner table. She had a tray of food in front of her, but she wasn't eating. Instead, she was reading from a tablet, her amber eyes moving quickly across the screen. "What's she studying now?" Haijin asked. Tae-Min checked the tablet's display remotely through his administrator access. "Human cultural databases. Looks like she's reading about individual rights and personal freedom. Maybe she's trying to understand why you keep rejecting her service." "I'm not rejecting her. I'm trying to respect her as a person." Haijin gave him a long look. "Are you sure that's how she sees it?" That evening, Taemin decided to try a different approach. He found Arya in the colony's garden dome, sitting quietly among the earth plants that had been brought to make the place feel more like home. She was staring at a rose bush, her expression thoughtful. "Mind if I join you?" he asked. She immediately started to rise. "Of course, honored Taemin. Would you like me to bring you anything? Water? Food?" "Just sit. Please, I want to talk." Arya settled back onto the bench, but her posture remained formal and alert. "How may I serve you?" "That's what I want to discuss. Arya, can you help me understand something? Why is serving others so important to your people?" For the first time since her arrival, Arya's careful composure cracked slightly. She looked genuinely surprised by the question. "It is the foundation of our society," she said slowly. "The strong protect the weak, the wise guide the foolish. The honored accept the service of those who seek to prove their worth. Without this structure, there would be chaos." "But what about personal choice? What about deciding your own path in life?" Arya tilted her head, the gesture reminding Taemin of a bird trying to understand a new sound. "Choice exists within service. I chose to offer myself as tribute. No one forced me." "But what if you want to choose something different now? What if you want to learn a skill or explore or just rest?" "Those things have no meaning without purpose," Arya replied. "Among my people, a person without a role to fill is like a ship without a destination. They drift until they are lost." Taemin leaned back against the bench, trying to process her words. "So, when I tell you that you're free to do whatever you want, you hear me saying that you have no purpose?" Arya's eyes widened. "Do I have no purpose? Have I misunderstood my role so badly that you wish to send me away?" "No, that's not what I meant at all." Taemin realized he was making things worse. "I just want you to be happy." "Happiness comes from fulfilling one's duty," Arya said firmly. "But I cannot fulfill my duty if you will not accept my service. This confuses me greatly." Over the following days, Taemin watched Arya more carefully. She moved through the colony like a ghost, interacting politely with other humans but never forming real connections. She spent hours in the library, absorbing information about human culture and technology. But she seemed to be studying rather than enjoying. Jun-ho, the colony's military advisor, pulled Taemin aside during their weekly security briefing. "We need to talk about the Kelani girl," Junho said bluntly. "My contacts on the Kelani homeworld are asking questions." "What kind of questions?" "The kind that suggests they're wondering if we've insulted them by not properly accepting their tribute. Elder Vex has been fielding inquiries from other tribal leaders about whether the human alliance is as strong as they thought." Taemin felt a knot form in his stomach. "Are you saying my treatment of Arya is causing diplomatic problems?" "I'm saying that the Kelani measure respect by how we treat their gifts. And right now, it looks like we're treating their most precious gift like an unwanted burden. She's not a gift. She's a person. To us, yes, to them she's both. And if we can't figure out how to bridge that gap, we might lose the alliance entirely." That night, Taemin lay awake thinking about everything Junho had said. Through his window, he could see the lights of the Kelani trade ships that visited the colony regularly. Those ships brought valuable resources and maintained the peace that kept this entire sector stable. But more than that, he thought about Arya sitting alone in the garden, trying to understand why the humans wouldn't let her fulfill what she saw as her sacred duty. He had been so focused on respecting her freedom that he had never considered whether his version of respect matched hers. The next morning, he found Arya in her usual spot outside his office. But instead of her normal, hopeful expression, she looked tired and confused. "Arya," he said gently, "I think we need to have a longer conversation about what you need and what I can offer. Would you be willing to help me understand your people's ways better?" "For the first time in weeks," Arya smiled. "Yes, honored Taemin, I would be honored to teach you." As they walked toward the meeting room, Taemin hoped he wasn't too late to fix the misunderstandings that had grown between them. Both their peoples might depend on getting this right. The morning sun cast long shadows across the landing pad of New Bison Colony as Taemin watched the Kelani transport ship descend through the orange sky. He pulled his jacket tighter against the cold wind and checked his watch again. The ship was exactly on time, just like everything the Kelani did. Hyjin stood beside him, her tablet ready to record the official greeting. As the colony administrator, she handled most diplomatic meetings, but this one was different. The Kelani had specifically requested Taemin's presence for what they called a ceremony of gratitude. "Do we know what kind of ceremony this is supposed to be?" Taemin asked, watching the ship's landing thrusters kick up dust across the pad. Hyjin shook her head. Elder Vex was very vague in his message. He just said they wanted to honor the human who helped negotiate their defense contract. "That's you." 3 months ago, Taemin had worked with the Kelani leadership to arrange military support when space raiders attacked their homeworld. It had been straightforward diplomacy, nothing heroic. The human fleet had driven off the raiders and the Kelani had paid fairly for the service. As far as Taemin was concerned, the matter was settled. The transport ship's engines wound down with a high whine. Steam hissed from the cooling vents as the main ramp lowered. Elder Vex emerged first, his scaled green skin gleaming in the sunlight. He wore the traditional robes of a Kelani leader, deep blue with silver threading that caught the light. Behind him came 2 younger Kelani males carrying what looked like ceremonial boxes. But it was the figure walking behind them that made Taemin frown in confusion. A young Kelani female followed the group, her head bowed low. Unlike the others, she wore simple white clothing with no decorations. Her scales were a lighter shade of green, almost translucent in places. She carried nothing except a small bag clutched in her hands. Elder Vex approached with the slow, formal steps his people used for important occasions. He stopped 3 paces away and performed the traditional greeting gesture, pressing his palms together and bowing slightly. "Honored Taemin," Elder Vex said in careful English. "We come to show our people's gratitude for your great service to our world." Taemin returned the bow. "Elder Vex, it's good to see you again. But I must remind you, I was just doing my job." Any human diplomat would have done the same. No, Elder Vex said firmly. You showed wisdom and courage when our people faced destruction. You spoke for us when others might have turned away. For this we offer tribute. The word tribute sent a chill down Taemin's spine. He glanced at Haijin, who looked equally concerned. In their briefings about Kalani culture, tribute usually meant expensive gifts or rare materials. But the young female behind Elder Vex suggested something else entirely. Elder Vex gestured to the two males, who stepped forward and opened their boxes. Inside one were gleaming crystals that pulsed with inner light. The other contained what looked like ancient scrolls covered in Kalani script. These are treasures from our most sacred vaults, Elder Vex explained. Crystals that hold the memories of our ancestors and scrolls that contain our oldest wisdom. But these are not our greatest offering. The elder turned and beckoned to the young female. She stepped forward, her movements careful and precise. When she reached Elder Vex's side, she knelt on the cold metal of the landing pad. This is Arya, daughter of my brother's line. She is trained in the old ways, skilled in languages and customs. She knows the art of serving honored guests and the wisdom of keeping a peaceful home. She offers herself as tribute to you, to serve in whatever way you deem worthy. Taemin felt his stomach drop. He looked at the kneeling figure, then back at Elder Vex. I don't understand. Are you saying she's supposed to work for me? She is tribute, Elder Vex repeated. Among our people, when someone shows great honor, to our kind we offer our finest in return. Arya volunteered for this sacred duty. It brings glory to her family and strengthens the bond between our peoples. Haijin stepped forward. Elder Vex, with respect, humans don't accept people as tribute. We don't own other sentient beings. Elder Vex's head tilted in confusion. Own? No, you misunderstand. Arya is not property. She is a gift of service, freely given. She will serve with honor until you release her or until she chooses to return home. This is our way. Taemin knelt beside Arya, causing both Elder Vex and his companions to gasp in surprise. Please look at me, he said gently. Arya raised her head slowly. Her eyes were a deep amber color, and Taemin could see intelligence there, along with something that might have been fear or excitement. Did you choose this? He asked. Yes, honored human, she replied in careful English. It is the greatest honor my people can bestow. To serve one who protected our world is a privilege beyond measure. Taemin stood up, his mind racing. He could see that refusing would be a massive insult to the Kalani, but accepting felt wrong on every level he could think of. Elder Vex, he said finally, I'm deeply honored by this gesture, but I need time to understand what this means for both our peoples. Would it be acceptable if Arya stayed as our guest while we work out the details? Elder Vex looked puzzled but nodded slowly. If that is your wish, Arya will serve however you command. After the ceremonial boxes were transferred and the Kalani delegation departed, Taemin found himself alone with Arya in the colony's main building. She stood perfectly still, waiting for instructions. Are you hungry? He asked. Tired from the journey? I am here to serve your needs, not to burden you with mine, she replied. Taemin rubbed his temples, feeling a headache coming on. Arya, I want you to listen carefully. You're not here to serve me. You're here as a guest of our colony. I'll have someone show you to quarters where you can rest and eat. Tomorrow we'll figure out what comes next. Confusion flickered across her features. Have I done something wrong already? Have I displeased you? No, you haven't done anything wrong. I just need time to think. As he watched Haijin lead Arya away to the guest quarters, Taemin wondered what he had gotten himself into. The young Kalani had traveled across space to serve him, and he had no idea how to handle the situation without causing a diplomatic incident. The tribute crystal sat on his desk, pulsing gently with stored memories. Somewhere in those alien thoughts might be the answers he needed. But first, he had to figure out how to explain human values to someone raised in a completely different world. Outside his window, the Kalani transport ship lifted off, carrying Elder Vex back to his homeworld. Taemin watched it disappear into the orange sky and hoped he hadn't just made a terrible mistake.